NFL Week 5 is in the books, and you know how these intros go. Some teams won, some teams lost, a Fox Sports broadcaster stabbed someone, yada yada yada. If you're like me, you love football, but you also watch it across 25 TVs at a sports bar and wake up on Monday remembering almost none of it. And that's not just because it's October and pumpkin beer is on tap. So, this week we're breaking it down by the numbers, the stats that explain what just happened. Think of it as a sort of football version of the 12 Days of Christmas. Let's start with 0 Jets wins. This year, the New York Jets have the honor of being the last winless team in the league. Justin Fields sucks up a lot of the attention around the team, playing a loves me not type of game around whether he's actually a starter every week, but the bigger story is around this team's defense. New York fired their defensive-minded head coach Robert Saleh at the end of last season to hire a new defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn, only to field a worse defense. It's funny, whenever you talk about the Jets, it always sounds like you're telling a joke. Owner Brick Johnson might have been going off coach prestige ratings in Madden, not realizing Glenn's was inflated by DCing in Detroit for 3 seasons. The Jets ranked 29th in defensive EPA per play and have yet to generate a takeaway through 5 games this season. This hasn't happened since 1933, the same year the FM radio was invented. And just to quickly dive in on Justin Fields, because I'm a little piggy and I like my quarterback slop, last year he had a 4-2 record in Pittsburgh, and some of the sentiment around benching him ranged from confused to angry. So far this season, he's arguably performed better as a passer with a 100.1 passer rating compared to 93.9 previously. But that Steelers team had a +7 turnover differential and was +25 in net yardage across those 6 games, while these Jets have a -8 differential and are -140 in net yardage across their 5. I had higher hopes for New York after their first game against Pittsburgh, but until their defense gets on track, it's hard to envision this being anything more than another miserable season. 99. The yardage of the pick 6 by Devin Lloyd. How about them Jaguars, baby? Apparently we have to take Jacksonville seriously this year. I was pretty out on them once I saw Jake Browning beat them in week 3, but you can't ignore a gritty win like the one they had over Kansas City on Monday Night Football. Despite being locked into a contract that goes to 2030, this season is viewed as a make or break for Trevor Lawrence. But maybe more of the attention should go to this defense, which might just wrap enough duct tape around Lawrence's deficiencies to keep the Jaguars from having a quarterback controversy. This Jacksonville team gives up the 4th fewest points per drive and forces 28.9% of opponents' possessions to end up in a turnover, the best in the league. Their favorite way to do this? Intercepting the ball. They lead the league with 10 picks and added another one off Patrick Mahomes on Monday at a critical part of the game. It's 2nd and goal from the 3-yard line with 2.5 minutes to go in the 3rd. The Chiefs are down 14-20, but all the momentum is on their side. Jacksonville starts with 7 guys up at the line of scrimmage, threatening blitz. And Kansas City thinks they have a great play to counter it, a trail route with Juju Smith-Schuster coming open into the middle of the end zone. But at the snap, Devin Lloyd does simulated pressure, backing out into coverage after taking a step into the line. It's the perfect counter, as Lloyd appears right into Mahomes' passing lane and steals it. His run back afterward was just a thing of beauty and totally flipped the game. The Chiefs did fight back and later take a 28-24 lead with just 2 minutes left, but the Jaguars did just enough to respond in the final seconds to snatch victory back. Still, I don't think this game even gets to this point without this play by Lloyd. Somehow, someway, the Jaguars are 4-1. 18. The number of unanswered points for the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos just got their biggest win of the Bo Nix era this week over the Philadelphia Eagles, 21-17. And they did it in an unorthodox way, scoring 18 unanswered in the 4th quarter to storm back after being down 2 touchdowns. There's been some anxiety around Nix to start the year. Brandon Perna of That's Good Sports has been tracking all of his bover throws and watching games slip through receivers' fingertips. Throughout the first 4 games, Nix was grading as one of the worst quarterbacks in the league via PFF. For the first 3 quarters, he went 15 for 28 for 116 yards and no touchdowns or picks, but then he turned it on late, where he put together a 9 for 10 performance for 126 and a touchdown for 3 straight scoring drives in the final 15 minutes. For Philadelphia, it marks the 3rd straight game of playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Against the Rams, it took until the second half to get going. Against the Bucs, they put up 24 early and then held on for dear life as Tampa tried to come back. This time around, 17 points simply wasn't enough going into the 4th. The Eagles are an extremely talented team and the favorite to get out of the NFC, but Denver's comeback makes it harder to ignore some of the offenses stopping and starting. 69. The age of the truck driver that stabbed Mark Sanchez. You can't tell the story of Week 5 without at least mentioning Mark Sanchez. And I don't want to make light of a pretty nasty story, but I gotta say, when I originally saw the news of the Sanchez getting stabbed late Friday night, early Saturday morning, the last thing I thought was that he instigated the whole thing after doing drunken wind sprints in an alley. The Fox commentator was set to announce the Colts-Raiders game before he was arrested in the hospital later on Saturday. Brady Quinn replaced him in the booth, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say we might see more Quinn, but we definitely won't see more of Sanchez. I'll add a link to the story in the description to check out more details if you're interested. 1. The number of career wins for Spencer Rattler. The monkey is off, Spencer Rattler's back. Finally, after 10 starts over 2 seasons, he was finally able to do what Deshaun Kaiser and Brodie Croyle could never: win an NFL game. He did it over the New York Giants, 26-14. Earlier in the week, Rattler said he felt like he wasn't playing losing football. Obviously, when you're 0-10 and saying that, it's fair to think, well, you haven't really been playing winning football either. But this one over the Giants did a good job of putting Rattler's words to the test. He went 20 for 30 for 225, a touchdown, and most importantly, 0 picks. As a whole, the Saints didn't give away the ball once. On the other side, from the end of the first half to the middle of the fourth quarter, New York gave up 5 turnovers in a row, including 2 Jackson Dart throws that gave Kool-Aid McKinstry the first 2 interceptions of his career. After going up 14-3, the Giants never scored again while New Orleans kept their cool, putting up 23 unanswered. On the season, the Saints have only 3 turnovers, 5th best in the league, and while they lack talent on both sides of the ball, they've been competitive in 4 of their 5 games, and I think Kellen Moore deserves some credit there. They aren't a good team by any means, but they're definitely fighting. 8. The number of interceptions Jake Browning has thrown. I don't know who this Jake Browning is, but he definitely isn't the guy we saw in 2023. That guy used to give the Bengals a chance to win each week. Whoever this guy is now actively takes that chance away. Browning's 8 interceptions in 4 games puts him on pace for 40 on the year if they keep trotting him out there. George Blanda type shit, and Browning doesn't even kick field goals. He's graded as the 37th best quarterback out of 38 qualifying players on PFF and holds the worst EPA per dropback in the league. There are 2 conclusions to draw. First, that Browning just isn't very good, and second, having an MVP-level quarterback in Joe Burrow was masking so many of Cincinnati's problems. That idea that 20% of the people do 80% of the work, but for the Bengals it might be more like 5% does 90%. Since week 3, the Bengals are dead last in net yardage, being outgained by 577 yards. Hey guys, future version of Football Doesn't Matter here. I wrote this part just before Joe Flacco got traded. I still stand by everything I say here. I'm honestly so surprised it happened. Seems pretty pointless to me, but hey, whatever. There's some talk of Cincinnati trying to find a new quarterback to make the season a little more bearable, names like Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, or Kirk Cousins, but even if the Bengals suddenly stop acting like the cheapest franchise in the league, it's hard to imagine there will be much of a point to playing QB roulette. Cincy's line is ranked 32nd in run blocking and 29th in pass blocking, the defense isn't very good, and Zach Taylor might just not be that great of a coach. Still, I guess it'd be nice to throw a guy out there who won't be booed by the home fans. I'm a Cleveland fan, I get it. 17. The amount of points scored by Dillon Gabriel on the Browns. The Dillon Gabriel era began in Cleveland this past Sunday. Well, actually it began in London, and a lot of us might have actually watched it more closely than even Gabriel's fiancée, who apparently couldn't get out of her shift at Sephora. Then again, if she was cynical like the rest of us, she could have guessed it ended like the 17 other quarterbacks who have made their first starts for the Browns since 1999, in a loss. To be fair to Gabriel, I thought he looked totally fine, and his 94.9 passer rating ranks 3rd among those 17 Cleveland debuts. And beyond going 19 for 33 for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks, the offense looked a bit livelier than it did under Joe Flacco. Then again, that's not a high bar to achieve. The Browns scored 17 points against the Minnesota Vikings, a number they haven't gone above since week 13 last year, and right now it seems only a mad scientist like Jameis Winston could squeeze more points out of this group. Maybe Gabriel can continue building on his performance to raise the floor of this Cleveland offense. Everyone knows their defense is one of the best in the league, but if the offense can't do more to support it, we could see them fade deeper into the year. -27, the net yardage for the Dallas Cowboys. In a lot of ways, the Dallas Cowboys are built to play in the modern NBA. Chuck up shots, play no defense, and try to outscore your opponent. They're first in the NFL in yards gained at 2,033, but last in the league for yards given up at 2,060, giving them a net of -27. And while the eye test in a crazy game against the Giants might have given you a sneaking suspicion they were around there, I was struck to see them actually living on opposite sides of the spectrum so far this season. Dak Prescott has over 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a 101.1 passer rating, and he's maintained his gaudy numbers even with CeeDee Lamb out the past 2 games. George Pickens and Jake Ferguson have stepped up in his absence. If the defense was just mediocre, this might be a much more interesting team. Right now, they're 31st in defensive EPA per play and have been especially bad against the pass. Maybe they get a little better as they get healthier through key pieces like Malik Hooker and DeMarvion Overshone, who has yet to play this year. But I think they'll essentially be a popcorn team this year. Lots of numbers in both directions while staying in the hunt graphic until season's end. 9. The number of Anthony Richardson's passing and receiving yards. We got an Anthony Richardson sighting at the end of the Indianapolis Colts 40-6 demolishing of the Las Vegas Raiders. It's a fun little wrinkle to the box score if you weren't paying attention to the end of the game, seeing old AR go 1 for 2 for 9 yards. But you might have missed that the one completion went to himself off a tipped ball. It's nice to see that Richardson is still making crazy things happen while missing his receivers. But really, it's a good encapsulation of just how dominant the Colts have been this year, and just how much of a revelation Daniel Jones has been there. Once a quarterback competition, Jones is now a dark horse MVP candidate. Indy has thrived on early downs. They're second in yards gained on first and hold the league's best EPA per play on early downs according to Sumer Sports. They've been moving the ball with consistency and average over 3 points per drive, and while I think Richardson still has a ton of potential at just 23 years old, there's no way in hell they would have gotten anywhere close to this production with him at the helm. Seeing a goofy Richardson play should give the Colts as much vindication in their Daniel Jones decision as the 40-6 scoreline does. 72. The length of the rushing touchdown Emari Demercardo would have scored. You've probably already seen the clip a million times by now, but it doesn't make it any less shocking. After going 72 yards, Arizona Cardinals running back Emari Demercado dropped the ball at the 1-inch line, resulting in a touchback. There was 12:40 left in the fourth, and Arizona was up 21-6 on a Tennessee team that really hasn't gotten much going all season. After the touchback, a big touchdown drive, and then one of the most insane sequences I've ever seen where Cam Ward threw a pick, only to have the defender fumble it into the end zone for another Titans score, the Cardinals walked away with a 22-21 defeat. For like 3 years I've wondered, what are the Cardinals? And this past week I think I finally got my answer. They're bullshit. Maybe curse is a nicer way to say it. Either way, these kinds of performances we can basically expect from them. Consistently inconsistent. They've lost 3 in a row, and even though these losses have come from a combined 5 points, I'm ready to be fully done with this team. 2018, the year of our Lord in which Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold were drafted. It took 7 years, but it looks like the number 1 and number 3 picks of the 2018 draft are finally playing up to their pedigree. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold are a couple of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, and this weekend they played in what was arguably the best game of the weekend slate. Baker and the Bucs just barely edged out Seattle with a 38-35 victory after Darnold threw a ball off a defender's helmet for a pick that sealed the game. But both quarterbacks played incredibly well. They win a combined 57 for 67 for 720 yards and 6 touchdowns. Together, the team scored 57 points in the second half alone. Baker is 3rd in passing yards this year while Sam is 7th, and Sam holds the 4th best passer rating in the league while Baker comes in at 9th. Both guys have become legitimate top 10 quarterbacks this year and are proving their teams to be contenders. If things keep going like they have, don't be surprised if there's a mini Mayfield vs. Darnold MVP debate at some point this season. 3-17, the combined record of who the Bills have beat. Let me just preface this by saying I think the Buffalo Bills are the best team in the AFC. If I had to choose anyone on that side of the bracket to make it to the Super Bowl, it'd be them. But they suffered their first loss of the year to the New England Patriots on Sunday Night Football. And while it was somewhat of a coming out party for second-year quarterback Drake May, it got me thinking about who made up the Bills' previously undefeated 4-0 record. So far, they've beaten the Ravens, Jets, Dolphins, and Saints. These teams combined for a 3-17 record and are some of the drabbest groups in the league. They beat the Jets handily, but both the Dolphins and Saints stuck around all game, and while they did defeat the Lamar Jackson version of Baltimore, it required a 15-point comeback with 10 minutes left in the fourth. To be fair, they're third in offensive yardage and ninth in yardage given up, and have the ultimate queen on the chessboard in Josh Allen. There's no reason to be concerned about this Buffalo team. But I will be watching their next game against the Atlanta Falcons a bit closer than I would have had they beaten the Patriots. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy it, and please consider subscribing to the channel so you can catch the next one. Thanks. Bye.